Okay, Gary, absolute pleasure to have you with me today and have you sharing this conversation. I've been particularly excited about speaking with you because so far within the group, you've been, I think, not only one of the most active, but the way that you shared, you've exposed complete vulnerability in there. And I think that's absolutely beautiful. I think that when you have these engagements with people who are able and prepared to share at that level, it's when you make such progress. You know, it's you just evolve your understanding of so many different things. So I've been super excited to have this conversation. So thank you.
No, thank you for having me, Nick.
Beautiful, beautiful. And the conversation that we've chosen, the question that we've chosen as our vehicle into this conversation is, how can asking questions help to elicit positive change in our lives? As with all of these questions, it seems pretty big. As I, as I hear myself say, I think, well, that's a big question. But that's
Yeah.
what we like, you know. So the way that I like to start these off is just by very openly throwing that out there. So if I were to ask you that question, Gary, in your experience, you know, how would you say, in your experience, asking questions has helped you to elicit positive change, either within your own life or within the lives of those around you?
It's been absolutely massive. I think, our questions really direct our focus. Um, I remember for myself when I kind of reached a really low point, it was kind of the turning me where I just had a few questions rolling through my mind. And if those hadn't come up, it would never have led me to probably having this conversation with you today. So, that can be, for me, so important. I feel that they can really lead you down a really positive route, but they can also go the other way. And, for me, the key is being able to choose, to know that we have the choice.
Well,
And
what factors do you think? That's an interesting point. I love the way you've taken that. What factors do you think affect your ability or impact on your ability to be able to choose?
I would say level of awareness is absolutely massive, because I don't want to say the higher the level of awareness to come at this from any kind of point of view, but more on a scale that I generally find as you go up in the level of awareness, you ask better questions, and they're generally more guided towards love, whether that's for yourself or for others, versus if you're a little bit further down the scale, then the questions can be a bit self-destructive. So for me, as you go up that scale of awareness, them questions come through a little bit clearer, and a little bit leading to more positive outcome.
Yeah, and I think I've got to say that I agree with you, because when I think of an expanding level of consciousness or an increased level of awareness, or however we want to label that, when I think about it, I think about that journey into that higher level is a journey of shedding the layers of programming and filters that you've added to yourself through growing up, and through instilling defense mechanisms to save yourself from pain, or whatever it may be. And I think that while there are many, many layers and many, many types of deep lying programming there, it creates reduced clarity, or a situation where you have reduced clarity. And then you don't answer the question, or you don't ask the question with pure motive at heart. It's always led with something else. There's always the sponsoring thought is perhaps linked to an insecurity that somebody may have. It's fascinating, the exploration into questions, because for me, I've always seen questions as this wonderful vehicle of discussion and conversation. Well, I say I've always seen. Early on, when I was younger, I saw different ways, but I was always a fan of a question. And what I've always found intriguing is I've always seen them as like this, a magic key. A great question is a magic key, because it can open a door to discovery and conversation that you just didn't know existed. A door into the fantasy world. And it can also, I think, be a key to open a door where the person you're talking to visits a memory they had or a thought they never had before that connects them so deeply with love or an insight. And because I have that kind of relationship with questions, when I hear the way that some people ask questions who perhaps, let's use this example here, perhaps aren't coming from a higher level of awareness, I feel like they're losing so much. I feel like they have the key in their hand. They just haven't realized it's magic, so they're putting it in the wrong locks.
What a beautiful way to put that. And I love the way that you say, it's like a magic key. It's something that, I definitely can kind of vibe with, because I feel the same. What you're just kind of saying at the start, that it can trigger so many insecurities, or so many positive kind of thoughts. But we kind of, until we realize what questions we're actually asking ourselves, that's such a big point. Because most of the time we're not really aware that we're asking ourselves questions all the time. I know for me, I didn't used to think or sit there and go, what kind of questions am I asking myself today? But, as you kind of disassociate from your thoughts, and you get a little bit more watching your thoughts, and you kind of go down that kind of road. I don't like to use the word spiritual or anything like that, because I feel it kind of disconnects you from people who don't have a good idea of that word. So, in my coaching, I always try and keep the language very neutral, and questions are language as well. So the questions that you can ask people can really give a good insight as to where they're at, not from a judgment point of view, but it helps in certain circumstances for sure, but also the questions that they ask you. And I found quite often, actually, it really hit home the other day, is that the questions people often ask you are the ones that they want to talk about. And when that kind of hit home, I was like, oh yeah, do you know what? So to have that space for them, and when questions come in, I think is really important. But,
Totally agree with you. And again, I think we come back to your first point about awareness, because if you're coming from a lower level of awareness, you're coming from a very egocentric place, then you're probably more inclined to not listen to what's being said to you, but more wait for your turn to speak. Because as an egocentric individual, you're going to be wanting to tell the world about why you're so awesome and get everyone to understand you. But when you come from that higher level of awareness, you you move towards, in my experience, adopting more of an approach of seeking first to understand before seeking to be understood. And I completely agree with you. A lot of the time when somebody asks me a question, I listen to the words, but then I try to think, what are they really trying to ask? And depending on the person, depending on how open they are and your bond with them and your connection with them, some people will just be very direct. But I work with some people that I work with in coaching, and they're not always, especially when you get to the really sensitive topics, when you get to something that really is emotionally difficult. And this is an area that I work with my clients in quite a bit, is helping to overcome deep lying pains, helping to overcome limitations, helping to get over anxiety, different things like this. So when I'm speaking to people who are very fragile in this state, and I'm encouraging them to ask questions, not just of myself, of their journey, their experience, whatever it may be, I find that the first few questions that come through are kind of like these stock questions, these prepared questions that come from a level which sits inside their comfort zone. The potential answers they can think of are safe answers, and something that I normally look to do is I'll listen. If I think they're coming with one of these stock questions, which I know are not useful, or not useful to be answered directly in that way, I'll ask them to rephrase the question. And I've been known to do this 4 or 5 or 6 times. And what you get to after a few times is the meaning of the question has shifted. Because when they try to, because the real meaning behind that first question is different to what the words say, and I've picked up on that. And after a while, they struggle to put a convincing mask on it. So by the 4th or 5th time, the actual question has come through. And this is one of the things that I work with the guys in, is asking the right question, not hiding behind a question, because this is the thing I think about it. We talk about how can questions help to elicit a positive change. They can also be a massive roadblock, because if you believe, well, I'm asking questions, I'm always open, I'm always asking myself questions, I'm always trying to be true to myself. If somebody gives me advice, I always question and make sure I'm being objective about it. But for most people, again, those questions aren't designed to get them to another level of intuition or another level of understanding. They're designed to confirm their place within their comfort zone, or confirm that they're right in choosing their actions, or just to feed some other core human need, to affirm something. So I think they can both. And again, we keep coming back to this point of awareness. We keep coming back to this point of being awake and knowing why you're answering them. Let's look at another question here. So again, with the same about the positive change in our lives, everything is themed with that, of course. So how do we think judgment influences our ability to learn these lessons? So if you hold judgment in mind in any way, and you are speaking with somebody who potentially has the ability, or whatever it is, to really help you get to the next stage, they're the door, you have the key. How do you think judgment can limit that?
Such key word, limits it. The moment that you judge somebody, in my opinion, you completely lose the ability to connect with them and to learn about them. It's one thing that I had to really look at the start of my journey, was I didn't realize how much I used to judge people. And it's so inherent in our conditioning, in the program that we're kind of, it's ingrained into us, and someone said something incredibly honest to me the other day, and they said, when I judge people, it makes me feel better. I was like, wow. Because I do think, the moment that we look at somebody, and the mind's job is to box something, label it, and then quickly move on. And you could walk past somebody in the high street, you can make a quick judgment, and that's not who they are. And it was the moment that I actually started applying, asking myself the question, why am I thinking what I'm thinking about this person? And then I took it a bit deeper. I heard Eckhart Tolle on a talk, and he said, how about nature? Judgment, they're labels. So with them labels, you kind of dive deeper again, and you look at people's identity, but then your own, and you're like, oh god, I haven't looked at all of this stuff. And it can get a bit overwhelming, but I think if you can take space around it and really be honest with yourself, then if in yourself your self-judgment, then you can look at others and not or try not to judge them, but it takes some time. And one thing that really helped me with judgment was that, say if somebody came at me with some energy that I wasn't expecting, or it's not where I normally kind of vibe at, then first is, do you have the choice? Absolutely, that's key. You've got a choice how you want to respond to them, but how you want to judge them or not. So for me, what I did was, if it was, say, an adult male, I'd think, if that was my dad, how would I want him to be treated by somebody else, not myself? And because I love my dad, and I would want him to be treated nicely. And just the saying that came through, is that I read somewhere, was, treat everybody as a humble guest in your world. And that really stuck, because from that point you're welcoming people. You're not closing yourself off, and that enables you to have a much deeper conversation.
I love that. I really love that, and I agree with you in terms of judgment. You know, if we have that first judgment there, if we label something as something, we limit its ability to be anything else. And you know, the way one looks is one of the easiest trigger that we have, and it's so dangerous. I mean, when you think about the profound nature of life improvement and life enhancement that can come from a very quick connection with somebody, a very quick increase in understanding that you gain from your engagement with them. You know, if you're a judgmental person, then you quite literally shut the door on any learning that you can take from human connection.
Yeah.
It's insane. It is dangerous. And if I look in my younger years, when I was in the city, you know, before I had, you know, kind of an awakened moment, if you want to call it that, a few years back, and moved into doing different things. I was working in the city of London, and it was very superficial. You know, everyone's three-piece suits, you know, top watches, Mont Blanc pens, you know, the battle of the business cards. It was what I now perceive in my model of the world to be nonsense, but at the time it was highly important. Now, I was so judgmental. Now, it's not like I would look at somebody and go, I never was at the level where I'd be like, you are not as good as me.
Mm.
I would just, and it wouldn't be casting them down through judgment. It would be me going, oh, I'm doing so much better than that guy. Does that make sense? I would use this judgment to give me this boost, as you said with that person who said to you, judgment makes them feel good.
Yeah.
Um, and because it had been programmed into me, and I was just kind of so used to going around that thing, it kind of, and everybody in my surrounding, it was the same. It was the culture, and but I was constantly unhappy and didn't know why. And I realized when I kind of moved out of that and had this kind of awakened moment that the the way that I was being with people, the judgment that I had for people, firstly, it did never felt authentic in me. It's, you know, it just always made me kind of feel a bit dirty. But secondly, I realized that I was immediately cutting myself off to almost every single person I communicated with. My personal and spiritual growth through that time must have been almost nil,
Right.
because I just didn't allow myself to grow or be open to these things. And then if I think then about some of the people that I met in the city and some of the questions and the interviews that we had and the type of conversations that we had, um, and I look at the type of lesson that I learned, they're all superficial lessons. Whereas well, recently when I ask with an open mind and actually inviting the person to challenge my thoughts and to give me a new way of seeing things and bring a new paradigm into my world, um, I can't have a 10-minute conversation with somebody without coming off thinking that was amazing. The
Yeah.
distinction is absolutely enormous. So I agree. I think judgment is it's a dangerous thing. And I think when asking questions, I think if we can stay non-judgmental, it's incredibly powerful. And your method of seeing somebody close to you is beautiful.
I
Absolutely
think,
beautiful.
I think it's just something that works for me. And when I overlay it can really help others, because I think it opens the door to a bit of space instead of,
Mm.
judgment is so programmed in that it's instant. So it's just, you see things constantly and you're like, it's almost like we're conditioned to quickly judge things so that we can quickly go and judge some more things. And the
Well put.
yeah, and the more that we, can get through, the better we are. And it goes on so many levels. And yeah, to hear what you were saying, it was one of the most freeing things that I built into, a new way of being, which was, I kept telling myself to watch when judgment would come in. And obviously, you can only ever be aware of that when you're present, in the
Mm,
moment. And it became clear that if I wasn't in the now, then yeah, them judgments could sneak in, and
mm,
I'd have to catch them later on. But,
mm,
as you practice them, and you take judgment out of your life as much as you can, the joy that comes as a
mm.
result of that is it's hard to put it into words, to be honest. It's more felt subjectively. So
Mm.
it's one of the things that I really keep an eye on for myself, just because it is so built in. But to release that, you just free up so much energy to just be more of yourself.
Mm.
And as I've dived a bit deeper on my journey, it's I now am reading things and learning things where separation doesn't really kind of fit in my model of the world anymore. So if we're not separate in my eyes, then how can I judge somebody?
Mm.
Because if I do, then it's kind of a bit weird, because then I'm judging myself.
Yeah.
And it's just like, okay, maybe I'm not going to keep that. So yeah, for me, judgment, it's been made a lot easier from that kind of level. Yeah.
Mm. And I think that I love your method of aligning, when you're talking to somebody, imagine them being someone that you hold dear. As you say, it's different strokes for different folks. It's what works for you. And I went through a process myself a few years ago where I kind of had this awakened moment, and then I realized, man, I'm super judgmental. Like, I've never looked at it before. This is bad. And I felt immediately quite upset with myself. I judged myself. And um, and then I kind of went deeper, and I kind of felt a little bit of solace in the fact that I wasn't kind of looking at somebody going, you're disgusting, you're a scumbag. I wasn't like that kind of judgment. It was just like it was an arrogant judgment, you know. And then what I kind of got to was the fact that this judgment, I actually started to find things that I could would allow me to position myself above the people I was judging. And this really did come from insecurity, as most of these things do. I was finding a way to persuade myself that no, you are better than, because I didn't feel good enough within. Um, the old thing, we look outside to kind of bring those into us. And I went through this process, and I shared a post about this actually in the group a little while ago. And the process that I went through, I kind of saw some importance in understanding the common things that we have with each other. And I went through a few days where I was just kind of rolling it around and seeing what is the one thing that we all have in common. And for me, I came to the conclusion, or let's not call it the conclusion, let's call it a milestone of understanding, because these things normally evolve and develop.
I love that. A milestone of understanding. I love that.
Yeah, very, very cool. It just came out of nowhere, but I'm sure someone said it before, but I'll take the credit in the moment. I'm sure I've read it from somebody far wiser than myself. But the milestone of understanding that I got to was that we all inherently want to be happy. Even somebody who is maybe suffering from depression will not be able to articulate that they want to be happy, but outside of that condition, that complex they're going with, they want to be happy. And what you do to be happy may entirely conflict with what I'm doing to be happy, but you are just that little boy who has a mother, who has a brother, who has a sister, who has an auntie, who has a nan who squeezes his cheek too tightly, who loves Christmas Day and loves the roast dinner on a Sunday. All of these things, all of these guys could cure your core human things, all really boil down to just wanting to be happy for me. And then when I started looking at people, it became impossible to be annoyed with people, because I would just look and I go, oh man, if anything, I'd feel sympathy. Like, all you're trying to do is be happy, and you're banging your own head against a wall over there. That can't be helpful. And starting to feel real empathy and sympathy towards people. And I think that was my method of doing it. And I think it's a very similar thing to what you're doing with imagining somebody you love. It's just, I think you've bypassed, a lot of the going around the houses that I did, and just tuned
Yeah.
straight into that loving connection, because that's what you see with your father. You want your father to be happy. And
Yeah, and man, I totally agree with that. Completely. And we all just, I remember reading that in the group, and actually started to respond. But something came up that and didn't enable me to finish it. But yeah, you'd said, you came to that milestone kind of thought that everybody wanted to be happy. And what I was replying in there, and I'll just kind of do it on camera, because what I kind of feel is I fully agree, but I also think that most people want is to be loved and to be fulfilled.
Mm.
Because for me, happiness and fulfillment are slightly different. You know, happiness, I don't want to be happy all the time. But, you know, if I'm at a funeral, I don't want to be happy.
Mm.
But I do want to be fulfilled.
Mm.
And for me, it's, yeah, fulfillment is what I see everybody searching for. And on a deeper level, I think it's really love.
Mm.
We have a joint mentor, and he normally describes it as the two main fears that we try and avoid. You know, the fear of failure and the fear, therefore, that we won't be loved. And when you really tune into that, and you can trace most things back to that, especially stuff.
Mm.
Yeah. For me, it comes down to love.
Do you know what? Thank you, because that's incredibly insightful, I feel, and I agree. You're not going to be happy at a funeral. That's such a brilliant example, Gary. You're not, but you can still be fulfilled. You can still feel and that connection to love. So yeah, and if I actually move back from that, I guess it was a clumsy word of the use, happy, because if I really, really drill into that in my mind right now, I'm seeing happy as a combined label for probably these two things. Because if I define happiness, it's derived through love and connection. That if a newborn baby is born and has no human connection, it will die. This is just the way it is. You know, we need that, we need that love and connection. And as you say, fulfillment is, you know, if I think about, for example, I lost my uncle a few years ago, and he was only a handful of years older than me, and it came out of the blue, and it broke me, like completely broke me. And it was actually our shared mentor, which used to be starting to work with him at the time, and this happened, and it just completely sent me off track. And I had to say to him, look, I can't start this project with you, because, you know, I can't be investing energy into something new when this has just happened. Now, through that entire period, I never felt happy, and I never felt fulfilled. However, this was around the time of this awakening point I speak of, where I was still very much stuck in the mindset of my younger years. Didn't understand fulfillment and happiness, and didn't understand death as I do now. Now, as I sit here now, I know that if I went through that experience again and I lost somebody close to me, I wouldn't be happy, but I believe I would be entirely fulfilled, because now my model of the world supports the fact that death is nothing but, you know, passage into the next part of the game, kind of thing. And, you know, that's definitely a conversation for another day. There's a deep one. But I completely agree with you, because yeah, I would be fulfilled, I'd be knowing, and I'd feel incredible love. And I think in those two places, you know, you can feel love and be unhappy.
Yeah.
So I think that's a beautiful insight. And I think that, yeah, knowing that people just want to be fulfilled and connected to love definitely, I think, bypasses the judgment, and then allows you to be that open book. So these questions that you use in this conversation can be really life enhancing. So let's follow a similar theme here, and then let's look at attachment as opposed to judgment. So how does attachment influence our ability to learn these lessons, do you think?
Cool. That's a good question. I love it. So, yes, attachment. Yeah, it's, for me, attachment is resistance to what is. So I consider that we generally have a baseline, and that's joy, because any feeling kind of unresisted smooths back down to joy, or at least it does for me. And, you know, I'm human, you're human, you know, we mainly do have that baseline. And I find that anything that's resisted is kind of shows up as an attachment. it shows up as something for us to look at. If it's not felt as joy in our lives, then it's maybe there for us to take a good kind of deep look at. So yeah, whenever something will show up, which normally is an attachment for me, yeah, it will show up as non-joy, and therefore it's something to look at but let go of. And that's the struggle. It's me basically saying, I can't let go of this, and I want to let go, and then the mind's going, I want to let go of this, but no, I can't let go. I resist letting go, and therefore I'm going to keep thinking about it, and it drives you round in this circle. It starts off as a thought, then it's felt in the body, and then if it's a strong enough emotion, the mind feels the thought even stronger, which feels a stronger emotion in the body, and you kind of go round and round and round to eventually, oh, I can't let this go. Or just like, oh, I don't know. But that's actually normally the point where you actually step out of it. And for me, actually, with attachments, in time, they do fade away. But for a long time, I had to just go, I can't let go of letting go.
Do you think they fade away because that is necessary for you on your journey, that this is what happens for you on your evolutional path? Or do you think that generally for most they would fade away? Do you think that's just like a default happening of these attachments, they fade away over time? Or do you think this is something that you experience because you're on this path of increasing awareness?
Probably the best way that I can describe it, Nick, is actually in relation to what we're just talking about. We're talking about death. And they say time is the healer, and in a kind of way, it kind of is, but it's not really. It's more that we've let go and surrendered to the fact, and we'll stop resisting that this is just how it is. Time is dependent on your level to be able to surrender to it. So, if you surrendered quickly, if you're in grief, then you're going to let go of it a lot quicker. But if you stay attached to it, you resist surrendering to it, then it's going to keep you attached a lot longer. And so for me, what I meant by time is that in time it kind of fades away. It's that it's more as we surrender to it and we allow it and we accept it, that the attachment can fade away.
I like this, and I agree. And again, if I overlay onto personal experience, that resonates, that really, really does. Because again, if I use the example of my uncle, it was only a few years ago, so it's a prime example. Initially, when it happened, there was definite attachment to the grief and the pain, and I wasn't letting the grief, because grief is a process, I believe, and I wasn't letting the grief go do what grief needs to do. I think it's a process that touches the emotional spectrum inside, and it kind of has to, well, it's almost like it's recalibrating your emotions kind of thing. There's this kind of weird experience I have with it. But what I was doing for a short period, and it was our shared mentor again, Peter, who actually ended up coaching me through this and the ways to deal with it. Before we had that conversation, what I was doing was I was taking this grief. I wasn't allowing it to process. I was saying, look, I don't have the strength to deal with you right now. I don't have the skill set, the tools in place to deal with you right now. So I'm going to put you over here in the corner of my mind, and you're going to wait there. And, I'm not going to look at you, but I'm always going to be aware that you're there. It kind of, and then from there, that would have stayed attached to me forever. And this is when you get, people who are, these things happen, their traumatic experience happen, and they hold on to that attachment for a long time. And it was Peter who guided me through being able to let go of that. And I think an interesting evolution here. So yes, I agree with that view on attachment when it comes to something? Say something's happened. Let's again use death. Somebody's passed away. You're attached to the situation, attached to the pain, attached to whatever else, any aspect of it. And I agree with you that they will fade over time, more so for others, some than others. But what about the attachment that somebody has? And again, if we think about the context of asking questions, what about the attachment that somebody has maybe to what they've studied, maybe to the career path they've walked? So I ask you a question. Let's say that you are a college professor, and I start asking you a question about a new model of education being launched in Finland, where in which the children don't study traditional subjects like math, science, and English, but each term they have a project based around something real in the business world, and they cover maths, English, and science as the topics within there. Now, if I ask you about that new form of education, because you have an attachment to your 30 years of being an expert and being told that you know all in your subjects and everything else, that kind of attachment could affect your ability to answer my question. That kind of attachment really probably will never dissipate for most going down this path. Surely would almost consolidate and get stronger, because additional time spent in that space is just additional leverage really to kind of keep you in there. And then as you get to your older years as well, who wants to kind of come up with the confession that they've probably spent their life focused on the wrong thing, if that is, what it is. So in terms of attachment, I mean, do you agree? Do you see what I'm saying here? The difference, I think, attachment to a trauma and attachment to like a dogma of some description could swing the effect.
I think, the second one that you're talking about is very much the ego at play. And, people throw the ego as a word around. And, basically the ego for me is everything that we label I am with. So, our identity. So if, our label is, in this example, I'm a doctor and this is my science and these are my beliefs. And I've spent a lot of money to get this certificate that says that I'm good enough. And then they've spent all their life validating their work. If I then go and question it, they cannot agree with me. Because it threatens their sense of self. It threatens their ego. And the ego's role is to be right. We can persuade ourselves that we're right in any moment. We can do something dreadful and still justify why we're right. Even though the heart kicks in later and it says, go apologize. The heart knows. But, from that standpoint, yeah, it's going to consolidate their ego. And if that's the case, until, they've built up enough references to challenge that, where it's, absolutely conclusive that they're wrong, then they won't change. And they'll probably, come even stronger against you because you're threatening their sense of self.
Yes.
You don't have to always be right.
It's more fun being wrong.
Yeah, and it's subjective, isn't it? Everybody's kind of right in their own view of the world, their
So
own
true.
level of awareness. So, compassion for that, to be able to come at it from, do you know what? I know that you believe in that and that's cool. I believe in it and it's cool. We can still get along. In fact, one of my best friends is a spinal surgeon. And, he's seen my journey go down a slightly different route. And, he has his own opinions. But what I respect so much about him is that he knows that I have a different viewpoint on certain things. And he's really cool with that. And vice versa. But unfortunately, if we resist someone else, trying to get somebody to act how we want them to, or to be how we see them as being, it's the quickest way to stress. If we're trying to prove somebody wrong and they're coming back at us, we're going to get stressed, we're going to get annoyed, and it's just like, it's unnecessary if we just take a step back.
So in that instance, and I agree with you. I agree with you. I had a conversation with a friend of mine, Stuart. It was actually another podcast recording when we were talking about what was his question again? Yes. When you speak or make a point, do you actually want change, or do you want to be seen to be affecting change? Which I think was a very cool question. And it comes down to that motive that sits behind, the motive that sits behind. And I think that the question I have here is when we know people can be so attached to dogma, and I kind of am answering this in my own head as I'm asking it, but let's go with it anyway. When people can be so attached to their dogma, is there any point in engaging on those subjects? Is there any point in asking questions? Or in this instance, can a well-worded question, even if somebody is too attached to their own dogma to actually engage properly, can a well-worded question still help to elicit change in someone's life?
I think so. Somebody told me that sometimes you got to hear things 40 or 50 times before 51 really takes you over the edge and you're just like, oh, boom, okay, I get it. So, if somebody's not getting something that, I believe in, then I just consider it another way for them to hear it, that maybe they'll hear it again and it might make a difference. But I'm not I don't believe that I've got it all figured out. It's, if I can know that I've totally invalidated my vision of the world since 6 years ago, then I know that I can be wrong again. So I can have compassion for them and compassion for myself, and just let them hold their world, and because they're gonna think that anyway, and they're gonna think they're right, and in their mind they are right. But I think one of the things that you said was motive, and that's really key for me. In fact, I just hold it under a slightly different word, and it's intention.
It's
intention. Because as long as your intention is good, I feel like you can hold, or you can do things that you think are good with a good intention, and they may prove to be not so good. But if your intention is pure and it's good, then I don't really feel that you can go wrong. So with that and with motive, I hold them very similarly.
Yeah, and look, and I think you're right. And I said as I was asking that question, I was coming to the answer in my head, but I wanted to run with it, and we came to the same place, which is joyful. And I agree. In the way that you put that as well, you actually made me feel insanely happy in that moment. By the way, because when you said that your model of the world and everything around you has shifted so much in 6 years, so how can you know right now that you're right? Because it could be totally different in another 6. This just filled me with, just as a side note, filled me with joy, because I think about how much happier I am knowing myself as much as I do from 6 years ago, and how the model of the world I have now has helped to support that. And I think, wow, 6 years time, how much happier am I going to be? Which from this point now is a really exciting thing. So just a side issue there. You made me feel very happy.
That's good.
But I think coming back to your point then again, and I love your thing about, you could be the 51st person to tell someone something and it could have impact, or you could be the 10th person to tell them it and they still need to hear it a few more times. And it's a very, very nice way, I guess, to see it when you are, in a place of knowing as to what you're saying, or, knowing at this stage in your life with this model of the world, knowing as much as knowing can be, and to still stand by what you're saying and, just be very accepting of what's going on. I think it's a beautiful way to be. And I think if I look at the way in people engage with each other, social media is obviously a very bad example of human engagement, but let's use that as an example. I think if these principles of understanding were taken into something like that, it would just be incredible. I mean, Facebook is the antithesis of that way of communication. It really, really is. But if we come back to the original question, can asking questions to people too attached to their dogma help to elicit positive change? Yes, because you can be one of those statements or questions along their journey that they need to get to their 51st question, let's say. But as well as that, I also think in addition to that, as long as you are not personally dogmatic about your view and attached to your view and don't, it isn't part of your ego, then having people disagree with you is actually one of the most beautiful things. There's a method of questioning called the Socratic Method of questioning, which is named after Socrates, and it's the method of basically just second guessing and questioning everything you say. Even if I agree with it, I'm just going to sit here and I'm going to question, and I'm going to put it to pieces, and I'm going to ask you to explain it to me in this way, this way, this way, from that angle, from that perspective. And the idea is not to say that I disagree with you. The idea is to invite you on a journey of exploring the depths of understanding that you have on the subject. So again, I think if we come back to the question, can asking questions to somebody completely dogmatic about their experiences or their beliefs, can that still help to elicit positive change? Yes, it absolutely can, because you could be one of the people on their journey to actually changing their mind, and the other side of that, their questioning of your beliefs could be an invaluable tool to actually understand it at a deeper level.
Yeah, and it's getting over the fact that you don't need to be the person that put them right. You can put your ego aside and just want to help somebody, just to help them out. If you feel that that's what you're doing, if that's your intention, is just to help, then put your ego aside, let them know. If they want to take it on, great. If not, no big deal. It's kind of like things that you probably do in your coaching. All you can ever be is the example. You can share stuff with people, because how much do people like to be told what to do? Not very much. So by inviting somebody to try something on, like trying on some clothes, just try it on for a couple of weeks, see if it makes a difference, see if it, helps make a change. If not, take it off, put your old clothes back on. It's fine. From that point, you allow enough time to build up some references. And it's like that 51st person. They've built then up enough references for the mind to just kind of, just a door to kind of open up for them to consider that they could be wrong. That's huge. Because if you can consider it, then you can start to move through that door if you want to.
Yeah.
But before that, it's like awareness. If I'm not aware of something, it can be, somebody comes into my life from a country that I don't know about. Now, before I met them, that country doesn't exist to me. It literally doesn't exist until they come into my world. They tell me where they're from, and I'm like, oh, wow, sounds amazing. I might go check it out. Now I'm aware of that. So like that door opening, if I'm aware that I could be wrong, it at least gives an opportunity to move through that door and consider it. What you also said, I look back on the different stages of my life, and they're all kind of, if I was chunking it down into 5-year gaps, each one I thought I had it all. You couldn't have. I was. It's funny because I was saying this the other day. If I spoke to myself 6 years ago, I would have walked out of the room.
Wow.
I wouldn't have held a conversation probably with me. And now, because I have that reference, if somebody doesn't want to hear what I want to say, do you know what? It's cool, because I have compassion for that, because I would have done it as well. So that enables me, to let go of any kind of ego behind what I'm doing. But if my intention's good and it's there to help, then I think it does eventually get through.
Yeah, I agree, and I love the fact the point you make of not allowing your ego to attach itself to being the one that made the change. And it's kind of like, many drops of rainwater will fall on a flower before it grows. The drops don't individually want to be the drop that helps it grow. It's just
I love that.
collectively come together. It's quite nice. That came to my mind from your words, so thank you. You verbally
No,
painted a picture in my mind's eye of
no,
of a
I
growing
love it.
flower, which
No,
was
I
lovely.
love that. Yeah. If you edit that out, please just send that to me because
I think your reaction means that my ego won't let me edit it out, but there we go. The ego's allowed in the car. He's just not allowed to choose the music, but we let him get some
no,
praise every now and then.
no, that's another good one. I like that. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, and I think look, I think I really, really, really enjoy that idea. And we think about the way that the universe works, the way that nature works. It doesn't waste any energy. It finds the most efficient way for things to happen. And if we start going back, a game I like to play, as I understand more about synchronicity and as I understand more about the universe giving me signs and different things like this, I've retrospectively gone back through different like little journeys I've had on my life and essentially mapped out the synchronicities in reverse. I've also started to see where the hero's journey naturally plays into your life, where you have your refusal of the call. You're in your ordinary world, you become aware of something new, you refuse the call, you can't go, and then you accept the call, and then you go through this very Luke Skywalker, Rocky Balboa type journey in your life. And I think in going back through and seeing these, the reason I like doing this is because it kind of helps me to spot things the other way around. So as I'm going through, I start to see, okay, the synchronicities are starting to come into play here. 3 or 4 things have started to connect and move, and what's the universe trying to pull together. And I think what's beautiful is as I look through that now, using that same model of retrospective analysis, if I use that model when I think, this person said something to me that really changed my mind in that moment, but inevitably they were probably the 20th, 30th, 40th person that said it. So where was it fed into me before then? Where did I pick up on those lessons before then?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying there's going to be a great end result to that process, but in this moment, it feels like it's going to be very useful. And I think probably the least I'll do is probably send some gratitude messages to people saying, thank you. I've just realized you were actually pivotal, a pivotal part of this journey.
Yeah.
But I
That's
think, go on.
sorry, Nick. Carry
No, go on, go on, go on.
No, it's just really flagged something up because it's something that I was very recently considering as well. The backtracking of the different stages in order to spot it better going forward, and it's such a strange memory that came back because I was 18 when I first saw this kind of in my mind, but I kind of ignored it. And the reason I ignored it was because I was on a night out with all the guys, and there'd been a few beers, and I was 18. I used to be a big party guy, so not so much now. Um, but yeah, used to be a massive party guy, and I just remember being in this club. I can recall it so clear, even after a few beers, and it was just this voice in my mind going, "See things for what they truly are." And there's been stages throughout my life where that message just keeps coming through of see things for what they truly are, or are you seeing things for what they truly are? And it came back again, and it almost was like a cascading back that I remembered that moment because I thought it was so odd, but I didn't have the awareness that I do now. And that when you said that, I was just like, very interesting that I was having that thought stream. And with synchronicities thrown into the same sentence, it's fun.
And do you know, just that we've got to the point of synchronicities. I watched a YouTube video a little while ago, and there was an explanation of synchronicity, and it was talking about cooking a dinner. Now, if you envisage yourself as being a different ingredient in this dinner, let's say the dinner, there's some lettuce and some salad in the fridge, there's some meat, there's some there's some potatoes, and the person who's cooking, the chef, comes over, and each one of these ingredients wants to realize their potential, wants to realize their life's purpose in providing sustenance to somebody. So the person comes in, looks in the fridge, he takes out the potatoes because he needs to boil these first, and then he's going to roast them and everything. And the lettuce is sitting there going, hold on a minute, why are you being selected? Why am I not being selected? This doesn't make any sense. You know, I want to be there as well. You've been chosen. I'm probably not going to be selected. Sits there a little bit longer. The potato is cooking away. Then the chef comes in and pulls out the meat. Your turn next, because it's next to cook. The salad sits there and thinks, oh, hold on a minute. This is not fair. Everyone's being chosen ahead of me. This just isn't fair. But the salad doesn't have the ability to chunk up and have a look at the fact that these pieces have to go before so that you can go on that plate and do what it is you're here to do. And I think a lot of the time with synchronicity, we can't chunk up and see the greater picture of what's going on, that all these other things that we either don't see and don't associate as being connected, or see and sometimes become aggrieved about, why are they getting something I'm not, are normally the things that need to move and shift and move and set themselves in place for you to then go and achieve what you want to achieve, or experience what you want to experience. I'll find this link actually and I'll share it with you, because the whole thing is about 30 minutes long and it's spectacular. It really, really is good. But again, when we look at synchronicities, and again, if we talk about the retrospective review and retrospective analysis, it's been incredible for helping me to spot synchronicities like that. And this is why I absolutely adore bringing the concept of you need to hear something multiple times often for the door to be opened and for it to be, you know, accepted as and brought inside. And this again pulls us full circle to our question, because asking questions without judgment and asking questions without attachment, which then reduces any resistance. Three things that Eckhart Tolle says: non-judgment, non-resistance, non-attachment are the paths to enlightenment, by the way. But if we can ask a question devoid of those three things, from a place of honesty, understanding, and acceptance, then we are just kind of playing the universal game of synchronicity. We're giving somebody, we're being one of their steps to their 51, one of the contributors to them eventually learning this. You know, we're asking those questions that give us maybe a little bit more understanding that we're not ready to process at this point, then in the future we will be. So it kind of feels like using questions as a vehicle for communication with non-attachment, with non-judgment, with non-resistance, really is falling in line with the universal pattern of synchronicity. You know, you're playing your part in the role. You're touching these people ever so slightly, not being attached to wanting any response from them, just doing it for the sake of doing it and being okay to move on.
Absolutely. And you know, when you can view it from that point and you take the ego element out of it all, then it all seems to work very nicely. You know, if you're not attached to you being the focal point of making all them synchronicities happen, you're just part of the game that, you know, needs to be moved around a certain way so someone else can meet someone else and someone else can meet someone else. And, you know, the general goal is wholeness. And the moment that we are in this world of separation, you know, the fact that we have language of questions, the fact that they have an answer, is separation and duality. And I think what we're always trying to get back to is the wholeness, the answer to the question that gets to make us feel whole. And that's again, I think, why we get so lost. And it's almost, we're playing a game that's non-completable. And it's when you kind of step back and you can chunk up, you know, to maybe some things that aren't seeing as believing, then the whole picture can present itself, I think.
I think that's beautifully put. I'm just sitting here just grinning to myself. Like, that was lovely. I could listen to that again.
Don't ask me to do it again.
No, in all seriousness, I think that's beautiful. And I think that we've naturally found a lovely milestone of understanding to this initial question. And I think it's a nice place for us to tie up this round of conversation. And the reason I say this round of conversation, Gary, is I think that firstly, it's been an absolute joy exploring questions with you. But secondly, I think we've touched on a few things here, which, as with any amazing conversation, are going to affect my thought process after here. But are going to send me into a few days of reflective thought. And I think just inevitably there's going to be a lot of realization, a lot of learning that comes from this. And I think it'd be really, really amazing for us to revisit this in a few weeks' time. And we've both had that chance to kind of sit with it and maybe even revisit some of the insights that we actually had on this and see if now we've gone back into the real world and we've had them at the forefront of our mind, how we feel about them, whether we've evolved that understanding or whatever it may be. So I'd love to invite you back for that in a few weeks.
No, I would love that. And, just through having this conversation with you, Nick, you've opened my mind to holding things differently for sure. And especially, how, I think we could have ended the conversation with how you summed it up with regards to synchronicities and everything moving around. So yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for your time.
Amazing. Gary, beautiful soul. Thank you so much.